Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening on affordable home ownership. I'm Kate Good, Executive Director of the Parish Resource Center, and we're delighted that you're here and also that we have wonderful people joining us to talk about affordable home ownership in our community. We have a number of people joining us live, and then we have quite a few people who have also asked for the recording. So we will have additional people watching this tomorrow and later in the week. Just a couple of housekeeping details. I have a number of questions to ask tonight's panelists, and then we will also have a time for folks to ask additional questions. If you have questions as we're talking, please feel free to chat them in the chat box, sort of in the center at the bottom of your screen, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's fine too. We'll also, as I said, have time at the end for questions as well. So with that, I will start with my first question. Thanks to each of you on the panel tonight, Shelby, Jose, and Allison. And I'm just going to ask if you don't mind to briefly introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of the work that you're currently doing. Each of you is in leadership in your organization, but if you could give us a little overview of what each of your organizations is currently working at, that would be great. And Jose, if you don't mind going first.
Sure. Thank you, Kate. And good evening to everybody. Haven't done this in a while. So I appreciate this opportunity to come speak and talk about SACA and the work that SACA has been involved in now for 49 years in the Lancaster community, more specifically in the city of Lancaster, mostly focused on Southeast Lancaster and whatnot. So I'm currently the president of SACA. I'm part of a transition of leadership that's going to take place next year, where I will also become the CEO of SACA and SACA Development. And our long-term CEO, Mr. Carlos Guapera, who's been our leader for 49 years, is going to retire and take on another task that involves some of the work that we currently are involved in, but in a more regional function. So a little bit about SACA, as I said, we've been in existence for 49 years. Our work today is focused on 5 areas. The first one being affordable housing and commercial corridor improvements, and through our organization, SACA Development, and other various special purpose entities that we've developed for our projects. So over the last, I'd say 35 years, we've been heavily involved in providing home ownership opportunities for families and specifically in the southeast section of Lancaster City. And we've developed over 200 affordable housing units that are owned or were developed for ownership, of which 72 are brand new townhouse units. And we're currently working on a project that's on Chesapeake and South Duke. It's called Conestoga North. We last year finished 9 units, are getting ready to build an additional 9 units that are going to be sold to families that make 80% or less of median income. And we've also committed to selling 3 units to families that are at 50% of the median income for Lancaster County. We also do rehab resale of blighted properties or properties that are in states of disrepair. Over those units, we've done about 130 of those units throughout our time. Currently have 5 that's pending to be rehabbed and then of course resold. We have a rehab standard that we apply to all those units. And so those units get overall work done that encompasses everything new from electric to plumbing to the heating systems. And then we also ensure that each unit that we rehab has air conditioning as part of our rehab standard. It gets new roofs. We tend to change the floor plan if the floor plan that exists is not functional. and we tend to want to create a more useful first and second floor by providing an opportunity to put either an additional bathroom and also the laundry facility, most likely up on the second floor for the units. We also, like I said, do commercial quarter developments down on South Duke and Chesapeake is our Plaza Centro, which is a commercial center, which once was a nuisance property, and we've turned that into a commercial opportunity to have a full service grocery store there. That once was a food desert. Now there's a full service grocery store that serves that neighborhood. Currently working on doing a project where the Fulton Bank is. We're going to propose to redevelop a site there to create actually additional affordable housing that deals with rental housing, but not really technically affordable housing, but workforce housing, which is housing that's above 80% up to 120% of the median income. So a niche in the market that nobody's looking at, and we feel that that would be a good mix for that area there. So the bank, that Fulton Bank branch, is still going to be there. We're also going to bring Union Community Care down to this new site with their pharmacy that's up the street. Their pharmacy has outgrown that space, and so we're going to provide some a bigger space for their pharmacy. And also we're going to be developing space for an urgent care facility. The 50 affordable housing workforce housing units are going to be a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units that are going to be developed on that site. So that's a part of what SACA does. There's other things that we do, workforce development, through our tech center operation, where we train folks to learn English as a second language, get their GED. We also provide placement into job opportunities that exist, but we do specialized training with our partnership that we have with Harrisburg Area Community College in the allied health field, as well as our partner Thaddeus Stevens, who does instruction for the trades training that we provide in commercial, industrial, plumbing, HVAC, and electric. We have 2 facilities that we run these training programs from. One that's on Chester and Pershing. The other one is in the southwest section of the city. That's in on High and Laurel Street, the former Carol B. Winters Head Start building right behind the Kunzler factory. We also are involved in providing drug and alcohol counseling and mental health services in our community. We have outpatient. We also have an inpatient treatment facility that's up on East New Street and South and North Duke Street. And we also have a halfway house that transitions folks that are coming from either the inpatient facility or other facilities, and or coming and transitioning back into society from the prison system. SACA is also involved in working with our senior community. We have one of the oldest and largest senior centers in Lancaster County, with our partnership that we have with the Lancaster County Office of Aging. And so we serve about 80, 90 seniors a day at our facility. That's at 545 Pershing. We also are instrumental in providing access to community meals to folks that have food insecurities, and that's a long-standing program that we have that's in a partnership with the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. SACA is also involved in our public radio. So we've operated for 35 years a public radio station that's in a bilingual format that provides information into the community about various topics that are important, that need to be discussed. recently made some investments in our radio that provided new technology enhancements, as well as now we're live streaming on 5 platforms. So if you have access to the internet, you can listen to our radio programming anywhere in the world now. We also are, let's see, what I don't think I missed anything. So that's about it. We also do have rental housing at our General Cigar building that we developed 20 years ago. Those are 30 affordable housing rental units that we did with the low income housing tax credit that that provides housing to folks that are at 40 and 50% of median income. And I probably missed something, but SACA is a partner to all, I should say, and we help anyone that needs services. And so, you know, in our original inception, we were helping families that came to Lancaster that were relocating here from mostly Spanish-speaking countries. And so that was our original mission that we provided. Today, we're not that. We help anyone and that needs the services and access to anything that we can be instrumental in providing. That's it. Thank you.
Well, that's an amazing overview. Thank you so much. SACA does wonderful work in our community, and we really appreciate you being here and catching us up on all of that. So thank you. Shelby, do you mind going next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shelby Nauman. I'm CEO at Tenfold. And I know Mike said this last year, but I'll say it again this year. Tenfold, if you don't know, is the union of LHOP, which was a 25-year-old organization in the community, and Tabor Community Services, which was about a 50-year-old organization in the community. And we officially came together last January as Tenfold. So we, like Jose and SACA, have a lot of different programs that we offer in the community, and I'll just tick through them quickly. But I know Kate and Calvin sort of asked us to focus on what we do with home ownership, education, and down payment assistance. So I'll focus on that. But we do emergency housing. So for instance, we have the TLC shelter on East King Street, which is a 52-room former hotel where we have families and individuals and veterans that are needing stable housing for a short period of time and then transitioning into stable housing. We also provide intensive case management at TLC. And then we do supportive housing, landlord and tenant resources, including fair housing, outreach and education, the Financial Empowerment Center, which is everything from budget counseling to pre-purchase counseling, debt management, all the things people need to think about sort of stabilizing their finances. And we also have a match savings program that can be used to purchase an automobile, start a business, go back to school, those types of things. And then we have community initiatives. So the Coalition for Sustainable Housing, which if we get into talking about sort of the challenges around affordable housing, I would love to talk about the coalition as a way for congregations to get more involved. And the So We initiative, which is a neighborhood-driven neighborhood improvement strategy and just focused in the southwest part of Lancaster City. And then we also do lending, so the down payment assistance loans, and we have the LIFT program, which stands for Local Housing Investment Fund and Trust, where we partner with banks. They loan us money at a very low interest rate in return for CRA credits, and we're able to loan those dollars out to developers of affordable housing. So just to focus on the down payment assistance and home buyer education, we educate about 500 people a year, and that's an 8-hour course that goes over soup to nuts, everything you need to know when you're preparing to buy a home, when you're, in the home buying process, how to select a lender, how to select a realtor, all of those things. The challenging part is inventory right now. We're having trouble. People that go through the program are having difficulty finding homes. So I'm sure we'll get into that. And then The down payment assistance loans, that is assistance up to $10,000 that can be used towards the closing costs or down payment assistance. And we do generally around 80 to 90 loans with the sluggish housing market and just lack of inventory. We've been around 60 loans the last 2 years. So we're starting to see signs that the market is softening a little bit. So we're hoping to bump that up and assist more folks with that. And the folks that we assist are income eligible, so low to moderate income. We're sort of the opposite of a bank. You need to have a low income to qualify for our down payment and closing cost assistance loans and be a first-time home buyer.
Thank you so much, Shelby. You all do amazing work in the community as well. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that overview. Allison?
All right, well, I guess I didn't realize our Habitat for Humanity is the baby of the three. We've been around for 36 years. I thought that was pretty good, but y'all got us beat. No, so it's and we're very, very happy to be working alongside both SACA and Tenfold in different capacities, which is really, I think, speaks to the collaboration that is in Lancaster here is really a special place. So my name's Allison Davis. I am our Family Services Manager. So anything that kind of relates to the families throughout the Habitat process, I'm their gal, anywhere from, the inquiry process through application, if they're accepted through our sweat equity program, which is 250 to 400 hours that they invest into the program, our families, and then upon completion of their hours, as well as construction on the home, then I underwrite our 0% interest mortgages and then serve them as a homeowner. We currently we have 6 folks in our program right now. We're slowly going through, have as many as 14 at one point. And that does cover Lancaster and Lebanon counties. Lancaster merged with Lebanon County in 2016. So we're still kind of figuring out the best way to serve 2 counties at one time. We were really excited. January 2020, we were working in both counties simultaneously for the first time. That of course only lasted a month or so. But we were, very grateful to have weathered the worst of the COVID storm and got back to building. Kind of a little bit what makes Habitat for Humanity unique, as opposed to SACA and Tenfold, is that we do build with all volunteer labor. We subcontract out roof, heating, HVAC, and electrical, but everything else is done by just, everyday folks, which I think is a really special way that anyone can come and contribute to a homeownership opportunity for an individual. Again, we're in that same niche group of folks, 40 to 80% AMI. We're looking for folks that absolutely do have a need for housing, but do have a capacity to pay a monthly mortgage. Any chance I get to bust Habitat myths, I'll take it. So the big thing that folks a lot of times complain to us that, we give our houses away for free, and even members of the public call and say, I'm getting evicted on Friday, can I have a Habitat house? And unfortunately, it's, that's a really challenging space for us. We cannot serve the, folks in crisis housing, and we have to, rely on our partner organizations like Tenfold and SACA to serve that population. And then hopefully as they stabilize and kind of move along the housing continuum, we can get them at some point once we get to the home ownership phase. But, as the program takes, if everything goes well, which it rarely does, but that's what we shoot for anyway, the program does take about a year. And that's folks doing their sweat equity in addition to us physically building the home. So they need to be stable enough in that year leading up to it that they're kind of ready for the next step. And even somebody, in a worst case scenario that's getting evicted on Friday, it would not be in anyone's best interest, the organization or this individual, to stick them with a market rate mortgage right off the bat. So we do kind of need folks to have a certain level of stability until they're getting into a mortgage. The cherry on the top of the sundae of our program is they are buying their houses market rate, which is getting a little more challenging by the second, but it is a 0% interest loan. So that gets into which I know we'll get into a whole bunch in the rest of the workshop, but some of the kind of social justice components of affordable housing. We're really serving folks that historically have not been able to pursue a conventional mortgage, and so we're serving them by kind of accessing our money, and we're just not charging them for it, as opposed to a conventional bank. So it does, that's one way that they make them affordable, and then we have some tools to kind of fill in any gaps as need be. So we've got about 250 homeowners across Lancaster and Lebanon counties. And it's very much like It's a Wonderful Life building and loan model where their mortgage payments kind of go into building the next house. So really luckily, we've got 74 mortgages in the portfolio right now, with actually a bunch paying off, kind of multiple folks paying off each month as we go, in that 36 years of being around, which is really exciting. Also means we have to be adding folks on into the portfolio at the same rate that folks are paying off, but that's one of the lovely challenges that we have. So I think that's mostly about Habitat.
Thank you. Habitat does life-changing work, and I really appreciate all that you all do. There's a lot of, we have sort of a general question of the challenges for affordable home ownership next, but I think it might be helpful to sort of break that down into more specific questions. As I heard each of you talking, there are a lot of things that are challenging as people try to access affordable home ownership. It might be helpful, if this is a relevant question, to hear a little bit about how the market is changing. Shelby, I know you spoke to that as you were talking, and I'd be glad to hear from any or all of you. We've had a notoriously very tight housing market. We've seen interest rates go up. How have you seen things changing, if you have at all, and how does that impact affordable housing in our community?
I'll go. So definitely the last couple of years have been a challenge with the tight market, and then hardly any supply in the market. Excuse me. So for us, I mean, we've always been committed to developing the affordable housing, 80% or less of median income, and we've always had demand for that housing. That's a niche, I believe, that we created, that besides Habitat doing that program, nobody else is developing ownership housing at affordable levels like SACA has for the past 20, 30 some years. And so we take great pride in figuring out all the dynamics of making it work. And so yes, this past couple of years have been challenging because of the inflation issues, driving up the cost of the rehab, driving up the cost of new construction to levels where we're really difficult to make the projects work. Let me take a sip here of my drink. So, for example, in our new construction project that I referenced earlier at Conestoga North, we built a phase that cost us about $3.3 million to build. The first phase, 9 units, which averaged out to about $315 a unit. And then we're selling those same units for $170 and $165 to keep the affordability in place for the families. So that subsidy, or I call it an investment, it's actually a subsidy that comes from the funding that we are able to access. puts a restriction on the deed for a period of time where the affordability period has to be maintained for those units. For those, because of the amount of subsidy that's in each unit there, each family had to commit to a 15-year affordability period, which means that if they need to sell their property at any point in time, they have to find a qualified person like they qualified when they were looking for their housing. After 15 years, that goes away. So all the equity that gets built in these units becomes their equity. And one of the reasons why we do this is because we believe in generating community wealth, and we see home ownership as being one of those tools that provides that opportunity, and then it could be transferred over, over the family over time. So yes, it's been very challenging. And actually for the next phase of the units that we're going to build, that's going to cost close to 3.8 million to build an additional 9 units, and there now we're pushing about $350 a unit, and only $5,000 increase in the pricing that we were able to finagle as the interest rates were going up. We had to consider that risk as well, because that's going to drive the affordability for some of the families as well. How much will they be able to afford to get a mortgage with the rising interest rates? So, but we're confident that those units are going to sell. There's a waiting list that we have, and so we feel very confident that those 9 units, once they're completed, hopefully by the end of February or March timeframe, are going to have somebody in mind to quickly move in and take advantage of a brand new housing unit at very affordable prices.
Thank you. Shelby or Allison?
You want me to go next, Allison? Okay. I think what I wanted to talk about is sort of the need for affordable housing. So we work closely with the Housing Alliance of Pennsylvania, who does a lot of research. The Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authority also does great research. So in sort of the very low income families, like 30% AMI, fixed income, disabled people living with disabilities, seniors, there's a need for about 10,000 units in the next 10 years. Sort of in the next bracket up, like the 60 to 80% AMI, there's also a need for about 10,000 units in the next 10 years. So that means, like right now, for every family that would qualify for a unit, there's 4 families for every 1 unit. So 3 of those families are likely paying much more than 30% of their housing costs, which is the definition of affordable housing. So that means that they're likely sacrificing, paying for things like food, healthcare, education, just trying to have a roof over their head. So just given those numbers, and thinking about what affordable rates are, one of the other things that I wanted to highlight was that a worker in Lancaster County needs to earn about $19.58 an hour to afford rent for a very modest 2-bedroom apartment or house. And so when you look at average wages of essential workers, people like teaching assistants, health aides, childcare workers, even ambulance drivers, they're below that threshold. So this would, I think to Allison's point, we're always myth busting when we have the opportunity, and this is a great group to do it in. It's the affordable housing is for working families. The United Way has a great resource called the Alice Report, and that's, you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong, asset limited income earning families or something like that. But it's basically people that are working families just above the poverty line, and just how difficult it is to sort of maintain your housing and keep all those balls in the air. And basically you're one, emergency away from facing eviction or needing, to take out loans from family and friends and things like that, just to continue kind of your way of life. So I think one thing I would say is LHOP had done the 2013 housing study, and that thank you, Tim, asset limited, income constrained, employed. Thank you, Tim Strudler. So that came out in 2013. The EDC, Center for Regional Analysis, is on the cusp of completing one for Lancaster County that is current. And I think what we're going to see, or one of the data points we're really going to see there, is just how many people really have incomes that are not sustainable and don't align with the housing we have in Lancaster County. So stay tuned on that. We can definitely share that information when it's out, but I think it's really going to illuminate the need for more affordable units. I think we already know we need them, but people are maybe not understanding who those units are for.
Thank you. Allison?
Yeah, one of the ways that, the market has been a challenge for us, in addition to cost of materials and obviously the rising costs of everything these days. But it's just getting really challenging. And I think, Jose illustrated that really well. It takes a lot of benevolence to build affordable housing. And I think it just is, for a for-profit developer to go into debt to $150,000 per unit, that's kind of beyond benevolence. A lot of folks even challenge our model to say, why don't you, generate a little bit interest or something to offset the cost. Like, well, the whole point is that we're not looking to make a profit off of this, but the ways that the market has been challenging for us is it's just competing with for-profit developers on condemned properties, on completely dilapidated properties. So we do rehabs as well as new builds. The rehabs, pre-COVID, market madness, going for maybe $20,000-$30,000, and condemned houses now, completely, the ones that need a complete rehab, going for $80,000-$90,000, just because of the competition is so wild. So it does definitely make things a lot more challenging for nonprofit developers to be able to compete in that marketplace. Not to mention how many deals are happening off market. We lost out on a couple bids because people came in with cash, and that's the same same issue that a lot of folks that are trying to purchase affordable housing, folks coming in with cash, as opposed to I have a mortgage and this assistance program and all of these things that are layered on to make it so that I can actually afford this piece of property, and someone's dropping in from out of the community with like literally a bag of cash. Those are it's just creates a really unfair competitive environment. So that is challenging, but we when interest rates go up, that's one thing. I don't have to worry about 0% interest mortgage product, so that we're locked in on that, and we're able to make it happen in that way. But it's definitely just as if life needed to get harder. It definitely just pinched us all.
Thank you. Just following up a little bit on that, is our community a more attractive community to people moving into the area? Are we a fuller community, or is the competition for properties that normally would have been maybe more accessible as affordable housing? What has shifted that makes it harder to find housing that can be rehabbed and turned into affordable housing, or what has shifted in terms of people who are looking to own an affordable home, now finding it almost impossible to do so.
So with regard to the inventory that exists, that's the biggest challenge. So as the investor who was taking advantage of the low interest rate market to go borrow money to be able to do his venture, to make things work, rehabs the property and then sells it for a profit. Obviously, SACA isn't into that. We want to rehab a property to create a real sustainable living environment for a family that's going to purchase the unit. But that continues to be a challenge even today, as even the market's softening somewhat. So we're trying to be creative and try to find ways of how we can acquire properties at a very affordable price to make the rehab that is substantial actually for what we do. That lately has been averaging anywhere from 130 up to 150, depending on the condition of the units that we've been rehabbing. And so the acquisition up front and then the holding time period that we want to hold the property for, so that we don't have the carrying costs associated with ownership of an asset that we're trying to turn around and bring to the market for affordable housing is critical in the determination of how we go about our strategy. So I've been having a conversation with the city, since we're city focused, and looking at ways of how we can become the first partners, and actually all affordable housing providers should be the first go-to partner with the city in terms of looking at their properties that they're trying to get rid of through their redevelopment authority or through their land bank process. At least give us first right of refusal on these properties before they go to the market to be bidded on by the investor community that's looking to acquire property just like we are. The city is focused on providing affordable housing opportunities for families, so that strategy kind of aligns with that, giving us first right of refusal. I'm hoping that does get implemented at some point, so that we can do a better job of acquiring properties at an affordable price. There was a question that I saw here. It wanted to know about I think it was Jocelyn that asked a question about SACA's funding to make up the difference between costs and what we're charging for the homes. Yes, we've been creative in being able to finance these projects, and so we do conventional lending as well as lending through Shelby's group at Tenfold with that LIFT program. We would do a loan for that as well. But most of our funding comes through either the city, county, affordable housing funds that's available through home funding, but also through the state home funds that are administered through DCED. We've been able to get those funds from the state as well, and also through FAIR, which is a program that is administered through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. Through transfer tax funds. The state has enacted a trust fund, kind of similar to what former LHOP had, Tenfold today, with the recorder of deeds revenue that gets generated through recording fees at the county level. But the state does it through their transfer tax initiative. And so there's funds available for affordable housing throughout Pennsylvania. And SACA has been successful in acquiring some of those funds, bringing them to our local community to be able to afford doing these projects. So besides that, we borrow money from lenders. We've been able to recycle some of the money that comes from small developer fees that we get, that we have in a pool of money that we try to recycle. That hardly happens. Sometimes it's only 5,000-10,000 that comes out at the end. Sometimes it's nothing that we get. But the benefit of creating the affordability for families in a quality home outweighs any profit generation to our organization.
Thank you. Shelby or Allison?
One of the things that I wanted to touch on is sort of the physical aspect of housing. So I read an article the other day that said across, the United States since 1978, the average size of a home has increased in square footage by 47%. So when you think about that, that's really unsustainable, if that's what we're building. And I'll say, like, the city and city administration is really dedicated to affordable housing and has invested a lot of money, like Jose was talking about, in trying to stimulate and provide for affordable housing units in the city. I would say outside of the city, where there's a huge need for affordable units because of proximity to jobs, it's very difficult because typically these developments need, waivers for maybe parking requirements or setbacks because of density. And density should be a good thing because it also helps preserve farmland, so those two things should go hand in hand. But what we see is when there is an affordable housing development, that's planned for a lot of areas outside the city, we see people come out because they don't want that in their community because of myths like it's going to overwhelm the school district, it's going to, increase traffic. There's a lot of, things associated with more dense housing developments that honestly, if you look at recent examples throughout the county, have not happened. And in fact, if you were to look at newer housing developments, you wouldn't know the difference between them and something that was a for-profit. I mean, they're very attractive. Typically, if they receive some of the federal funding, that Jose talked about, they probably have higher requirements than they would if they were a for-profit developer. So that's just one sort of myth. And I think I don't have the information yet for the county, but in the city, I believe that average household size is about 1.2. And since our housing in the city and in a lot of the towns and boroughs is, 50 plus years old, it was built for what then was a traditional family unit, which was like a 4 to 5 person family. So you have these folks living, 1 and 2 people living in 3-bedroom homes. So there's a real mismatch with the size. And the other thing with the tight housing market, it sort of, stifled the normal continuum. So folks who maybe wanted to downsize or empty nesters or maybe are single adults, that wanted to downsize really weren't able to sell. Well, they could have sold, but they would have had nowhere to go. So we're seeing that, evolution that normally happens with maybe, young married couples, young professionals, needing smaller units. Those units are even more scarce because people that would be traditionally moving out of those have nowhere to go. So one of the things that the Coalition for Sustainable Housing is talking about and is really trying to work with municipalities on, and some municipalities are starting to move forward, like Lancaster Township and East Lampeter, I think, are accessory dwelling units. So being able to build additional units on your existing footprint that could be for rental, could be for maybe that older family member who doesn't want to be in their their single family home any longer, but can't find an apartment to move to. So that would be one way that we could start to increase capacity in the county.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard that. Thank you. Allison, anything you want to speak to?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I lost track of the original question.
Just talking about, what has made it difficult increasingly as the market has been tight, what has caused that, what has changed in our community that has made access to home ownership in terms of just sort of are there more people in the community? Has the community changed substantially?
I mean, I definitely just anecdotally feel like, I know of a lot of folks that moved back to the area kind of in the COVID lockdown time of kind of wanting to come back home. Again, anecdotally through that, as soon as interest rates dropped, I mean, we were just seeing stuff fly off the market by outside investors, you know, folks coming in, you know, looking to have rentals in the city, but that are not, you know, from here, they're not engaged in the community. So that absolutely happened. And then there's just, I mean, this is a conversation I have a lot. There's not a ton of land left in Lancaster County. That's not preserved farmland, which is of course an asset to our community. That's not already in line for some kind of for-profit development, or that's not taken up by some other use. There's not a lot of land left. There's kind of only a lot of these parcels that, you know, kind of nobody wants, which is usually the ones that like, okay, here, we'll take a shot at these because nobody else wants it. And we're doing that. We've done it a handful of times, some kind of complicated stuff, if it's whether, you know, it's zoning or it's you know, just the configuration of the lot. There's been some things where, you know, we've been able to get a little out of the box, whereas, you know, a for-profit developer is not even going to take the time to look at it because it's too complicated. So, but even those are kind of dwindling. So that's a big, you know, we always kind of get that message, like, especially when we're out in the county, like, why do you have to build here? There's the whole county you can build in. It's like, well, really not that, there's really not that much that, you know, a nonprofit could afford. You know, certainly if we could buy a parcel of land, you know, somebody challenged us the other day, like, well, you know, this township is selling 55 acres of land. I would love 55 acres for us to build hundreds upon hundreds of habitat homes, but the reality of us being able to afford 55 acres is not quite there to then turn around and sell them at, you know, $150,000 or so. So that's just kind of another component of just thinking, you know, how do we hold all of these things at the same time? You know, the preservation component with our severe need for affordable housing.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I think we're all aware of some of the deterrents to affordable home ownership. We know that wages have, you know, are often a deterrent, but can you each speak a little bit to, you know, what you see as deterrents that people don't automatically think of, or things that, you know, really deter people from home ownership? And then also, obviously the building of wealth is a benefit, but are there other benefits that you can speak to that are behind your interest and work in affordable housing?
Well, I feel like we had, oh, go ahead.
No, I'll wait.
I was just going to say, it felt like we had an opportunity window for people who were a little bit sheepish about home ownership because they were seeing their rents, you know, 30% in 1 year going up. And so like a great way to stabilize your monthly, you know, bill as it relates to your housing would be home ownership, because you would have a fixed mortgage. But the problem was inventory. You know, like I said, we typically in a normal year do 80 to 90 down payment assistance loans. And a lot of the banks have products too for first-time home buyers, and our program stacks, you know, nicely with those. But the challenge was just inventory, because similar to something Allison said, like, since we're working with folks that are, you know, low to moderate income, they need a home that they're not going to have to then put a lot of extra money into. So trying to find a home that with a ceiling of, you know, 200,000 in this market, is just very difficult. We could get people pre-qualified, and we could get them, you know, we get their credit scores where they needed to be and matched with a lender and a realtor and all those things. It was just, you know, the total number of homes, especially if they have kids and they want a specific school district, it's like this huge puzzle, you know, and it takes forever to find that home. And oftentimes it's like more like word of mouth, you know, before something even goes on the market, trying to make those connections. So, yeah, I think that's what's frustrating, is like, for folks who were nervous about home ownership, it started to make sense because they wanted to be able to know what their, monthly bill was going to be, but then there was no inventory. So inventory is really what I would say is the biggest need right now, to be able to get more people that are working families who want to own their own home, give them that opportunity.
So I'll speak about the benefits. So home ownership actually stabilizes neighborhoods that were once in a declined state, and weeds out crime. Definitely can prove that through some of the work that we did in the early 2000s, where we worked with the city and PHFA, which I referenced earlier, the Pennsylvania Finance Agency. And they had a program called Homeownership Choice, which was really an opportunity for a nonprofit developer to go ahead and develop inner city properties to be similar to what the townhouse units look like in the suburbs. And that was the focus of that program. Lancaster was fortunate to be able to get funding to build 60 of such units, which SACA Development did over time, commencing in about 2005. Was the first batch of properties that we built, with the thought of taking a whole section of, or say blocks or a block of a neighborhood that was seriously blighted and had deteriorating conditions there, and acquire those properties and create a more functional site plan for the construction of new units. And so we did that 4 times, and we did that at the 500 block of South Plum Street, where we took, I think it was about 20 units, demoed them completely, and built brand new units that provided home ownership opportunities for, again, families of low to moderate income families that had a more functional layout, and also address the issue of parking in the city, which is a big thing with properties in the city. Lack of parking. So we were able to provide off-street parking and meet all those requirements. So we did that there. We did it on Palm Street, which was once in the early 2000s, before that actually, in the mid 90s. Notorious open drug market was between Dolphin and Green Street in this little roadway called Palm Street that was just horrible. People were getting killed there and whatnot. So we took it upon ourselves to buy all the properties there. On the one side of the street, we demoed the whole side of the street and built brand new townhouse units that provided more functional layout, parking, off-street parking. And then on the other side, the city made us take the units that were there, rehab them completely. But what we did was we took was once 2 units and turned them into 1. So we kind of lowered the density a little bit, but created a more functional property for the end users. And there too, we provided parking. We took the old Elks Club down on South Duke Street and North Street and did the same thing there. We bought that property, did a commercial development with the existing building, but in the back, they had some acreage where we built 14 brand new townhouse units. We did that alongside of Chesapeake, where closer to the side where the river would be. And we built 12 townhouse units there as well. So it does change the dynamics of neighborhoods. Those are benefits of home ownership. It creates pride in the neighborhood for families that are owning. And so no, this is why we're in this business. This business makes no money for us, the way that a for-profit would be looking at. Our projects are never financially feasible. They're always upside down, which is why I said earlier, it requires significant investment or subsidy that comes from sources that are there and available for this type of housing. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier, one of the sources that we heavily use is called the Neighborhood Assistance Program, tax credit program through the state, which provides for-profit corporations to invest money in organizations like ours to get a tax credit from the state off of their corporate tax. and those are 70% tax credits. And we've been very successful in shepherding that program to bring resources into our community, utilizing those tax credits.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Allison?
Yeah, I'll speak to some of the kind of deterrents. You know, we can't speak to affordable housing without kind of the elephant in the room of the social justice component. It's the elephant in my room anyway. But just, you know, obviously, you know, the past is the past. It's done, but that doesn't mean that we can't always look through this kind of equity lens when, you know, some folks in our community have been able to own land since land became a thing. And then some folks only, you know, in the last century. So it's just, there's no way in which, you know, those two could ever really be even. So we're looking at, you know, it's just in just how we've been talking about this wealth building component. So many communities, especially obviously communities of color, and as well as women, just have not been able to benefit from these generations of wealth being passed down. So just the sheer fact of, you know, some racial and ethnic groups just have not had the same opportunities of homeownership as others. And that, you know, we can't in turn, when we're thinking about policy, when we're thinking about programs, it has to be through that lens of, you know, how can we even try to start to even out the scales a little bit. You know, there's some communities that, you know, as recently as the you know, Fair Housing Act of 1968 made discrimination illegal. So there, until 1968, you could legally say, hey, applicant, I will not give you a mortgage because of the color of your skin. You know, 1968 is not in the scheme of time, in the scheme of people owning land and homes, it's really not that long of a time. So, you know, missing out on so many generations of being able to build wealth is a massive component to why the homeownership gap is so wide. I should know this number off the top of my head, the black-white homeownership gap, but I know incomes are at 60%. Black incomes is at 60% of white incomes, which, you know, obviously there should be no differential at all, but that's not too bad compared to wealth. Black wealth is only 5% of white wealth. 5%. So there's just you know, such two totally different ends of the spectrum when we're looking at who has historically been able to access homeownership and how, you know, how that deters the generations now. It's just kind of outrageous. So looking to kind of rectify some of those things, I think is a major component of what we as Habitat and we as you know, Lancaster City are trying to do to see how we can, you know, try to even out these scales a little bit. And thank you, Shelby, we got a stat here on Latino and Black and Latino renter statistics as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. A question that came in the chat was why we aren't utilizing small homes or tiny homes more, that we could fit more on the land that we have. I don't know if any of you want to respond to that.
I can jump in real quick. Nobody, the zoning component is challenging. So folks, especially, you know, there's, you know, one was able to sneak into Sobe. They made it work in the southwest neighborhood of Lancaster City. It's actually just around the corner from my house. But I know it took a lot of work. But then you're looking out in the county, and every single borough and municipality has their own zoning rules and regulations. And we're constantly trying to get them to think a little bit outside the box. And I feel like we are begging them to allow us to have, we're going, without naming any names, we're going through something right now where if we did by right what the zoning law currently says, it would be 9 homes. We petitioned to do 13 because that would make it financially feasible, and we were not approved. Same thing going from a lot in another municipality that was zoned for 5 homes, and we asked, in order to make this financially feasible for us to be able to provide home ownership opportunities, can you go from 5 to 7 homes? And rejected. And what we were asking for was to take the lot, let's just say for numbers, sake, a 30 by 30 lot, we're asking to go like 25 by 20 lot, 25 by 25 lot, we're talking about feet, and they won't even give us that. So a lot of municipalities just do not want, and I shouldn't, this isn't, I don't want to stereotype all municipalities, of course, but many are reluctant to even have smaller lots for home ownership. I would assume that's why we're not seeing a lot of tiny homes in Lancaster County, because just a lot of municipalities will not kind of budge on their zoning restrictions. They still want, big giant lots of homes and then just rolling lawns that provide no ecological benefit. But that's a workshop for another time for sure. And I don't know, Jose, you were going to pop in. I am assuming something around zoning as well.
No,
but
it's exactly, you nailed it right on the head with the issue of land use and whatnot. Those are issues here in this county that have forever been here. I was one of the founding members of LHOP when it first got started. When I was here before, I did grow up here. I left here for 20 years in between to go follow a career in commercial real estate, mostly in the valuation of. So I've come back armed with tons of knowledge about all the different things that affect values, and obviously land use is one of them. And so it is very restrictive here to be able to even consider doing a tiny home project outside of the city. It can't be done in the city. They didn't even have an ordinance for that either. But it's very challenging anywhere else as well. Even to create the affordable housing that we create today. Density is a big piece of this. To make projects affordable, you need a little bit greater density. As Allison was pointing out, they needed 13 units. They could only put 10. And so yeah, it takes a long period of time to, and I know the Coalition for Affordable Housing is trying to do their part to educate different municipalities about the need for affordable housing and the benefits of it. But it's an uphill battle. Even today, from when I was with LHOP, and that was one of the things that LHOP was going to push out into the county, it still is a very challenging thing to get done.
Thank you. Shelby, anything you want to add?
I love Jocelyn's question, because I've been thinking about this and seeing best practices from across the country. And it's usually, areas that have more rural land, and we're, struggling for land here. But when you think about it, I mean, most, the majority of affordable units in Lancaster County are, in trailer parks, and modular homes and things like that. When you think about that, wouldn't it be so cool to just, instead of having all of that affordable housing, have this tiny homes community? The square footage is probably similar. So it's not, out of the question. I think we just need to sort of reimagine it and get, you know, people advocating for that. And I think that's the challenge. It's like, because we have 62 municipalities in Lancaster County, whatever it is, all with different, you know, zoning requirements and things like that. It's really going to take people advocating. Yeah, Detroit, I saw that too, Jocelyn. It's really going to take like the community advocating for these types of things, because otherwise, if it's something new and it's something that hasn't necessarily been done here in Lancaster County, people are, their natural reaction is to, you know, say not in my backyard, or NIMBYism, instead of yes in my backyard. So that's what the Coalition for Sustainable Housing is doing, is really trying to pull together a coalition of people who care about this issue, and then they in turn could sort of put pressure on their local municipalities, or be a voice, you know, for some of these types of projects, so that those projects can move forward.
Thank you. That's great. And thank you, Jocelyn, for pointing out Detroit's work in this. Tim also dropped a couple of links in the chat too, that give you a more insight into the local conversation about this as well. So I'm interested to hear from each of you what your dreams are for affordable home ownership. You know, if we didn't have restrictions in terms of the sky's the limit, what would you hope for? And can you speak to communities that maybe you've observed doing some of this, or, you know, are there reference points that would allow us to sort of get ideas or have inspiration?
Well, I can pop in here for sure. So, you know, certainly I have a dream, you know, that it sound, you know, to kind of pull this corny move here, but Habitat, you know, Lancaster Lebanon Habitat for Humanity's vision is a world in which everyone has a decent place to live. And I kind of can't think of a better dream than that. That's, you know, there's, especially in our society, and this can kind of cover many different of our societal ills, but there's kind of no reason in this society that we can't have that dream. But in terms of the amount of wealth that we have in this country, it's just the distribution of that wealth is what is so out of whack. But however, you know, some realistic examples of places that other people are trying things out. I think it's really fascinating. There's a city in Illinois, and we know that Illinois was very heavily redlined, as in addition to, you know, pretty much everywhere from the Midwest and over. And the rest wasn't as much because we hadn't even really settled it as much. But there's a city in Illinois, Evanston, I believe it's called, that does give, if you can prove through their mapping software that your ancestral line experienced redlining, then you can receive up to $25,000, and that can go towards down payment assistance, that can towards, you know, owning your own home. I believe it can be used for going back to school, like a variety of ways in which you can use that money. And I think something along those lines of like trying to, again, repair some of the damage that has been done historically, and give folks a greater starting point. And it seems to be going, you know, really well in Evanston. And it was an article I found in NPR that I would be happy to share. But even just kind of looking at things like that, looking at, you know, how can we kind of jumpstart some of these opportunities, and either, you know, at a municipality level, on a city level, out of the box ways of thinking about it. And if that's, you know, also pushing for new zoning regulations and just trying to get out of the kind of that NIMBY kind of hell that a lot of us are living in. It's very challenging because folks are like, we don't you know, we don't want to see people experiencing homelessness, but we don't want to see them housed, you know, in our town. And I would really love to get to a point where that doesn't matter as much. That we can be okay with things changing. We can be okay with, you know, just a tiny bit of sacrifice for someone to have the dignity and respect that they deserve as another human being. But that's my dream, I guess, that everybody gets the dignity they deserve as a human. But that's challenging these days. That's challenging these days. But we'll bring it back up, Jose and Shelby, with your dreams again.
Well, you know, my dream is similar to Allison's, you know, and on top of that, I wish our organization could create more of these opportunities than what we have done so far. You know, capacity is a big issue because it costs way more than what we're able to sell these units for. And so I wish we could do more to fill the need. And have I seen what we do in different places? I have not come across an example of organization that has dedicated to working to providing affordable housing homeownership opportunity to families like we have. One of the reasons why we do get a substantial amount of money from the state, from specifically the FAIR program, is because I don't think there's anybody else in Pennsylvania that's doing affordable home ownership that they funded a project for. You know, they tend to fund other projects that deal with affordable rental housing. And our program is unique into itself. So I haven't seen that. Maybe these other guys have, you know, besides the Habitat model. I haven't seen anything else.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Shelby?
I mean, just to piggyback on Allison, yeah, it's that, you know, every person deserves the dignity of a home, a safe, affordable home that's decent. And it's really so foundational, you know, and cyclical, because if you don't have stable housing, you probably don't have stable employment. You know, if you have kids, you're switching schools and school districts. You know, there's some, I think Fulton Elementary, the churn rate for them in a given year is like 49% or something. So 49% of students are leaving or coming in, you know, in a given academic year. Like, can you imagine that? And just, you know, it's foundational to education and just opportunities to get engaged with the community. Like, it's just so foundational. So, you know, to be complaining about like our community prosperity or, you know, need to improve, you know, our local community without thinking about like how housing plays a role in that is just so short-sighted. Because if you were to put yourself, you know, in the shoes of somebody who's housing, you know, who doesn't have stable housing, it's very difficult to focus on anything else. And like our healthcare providers are really looking at housing now too, because they're like, you know, people are not going to prioritize their diabetes if they don't know where they're sleeping tonight. Like they're not. So it's just so foundational and so important to people being able to thrive. I can't say enough about that. And it just, like Allison said, like in this country, in this community, for us not to think about ways to provide that, because it's also not insurmountable. Like if you're in Allegheny County out in Pittsburgh or you're Philly, like it feels unsurmountable, but like the Lancaster County Planning Commission has maps that show for each municipality the number of families experiencing homelessness, and it's not huge. I mean, it's doable. So if we look at it through that lens, like I'd rather kind of like be the cheerleader and really encourage people. Like if we banded together, we could find a way to house people who are already here. It's completely doable.
So that leads very well into my last question, which is, how can the folks on this call, the folks in their congregations, the folks who will be watching the recording, what can they do to be advocates for affordable home ownership and affordable housing in their communities, so that we can get closer to realizing that dream.
I'll just say the Coalition for Sustainable Housing, we do regular screens for projects that are in the pipeline throughout Lancaster County. And that's not an easy task. We have this great volunteer, Fern Dennis, who used to work at LHOP and is now retired and is just awesome. And her and the representatives from the Lancaster County Planning Commission work together. You know, they screen through meeting agendas, they screen through newspaper articles, just to try to see kind of what's on the radar. So if anybody is interested, maybe to see if we know of anything on the radar for their community that they can advocate for or sort of follow, and try to be proactive about, we can definitely provide that information. And then I would just say, like, one of the programs we've had a lot of success with is our housing location advocates. So there are certain requirements for them to work with members of the community, like maybe they're transitioning out of prison or they have multiple evictions or something, like there's certain barriers, and those are the folks that our housing advocates work with. And the way that they help them secure housing is that they have relationships with a lot of smaller landlords, you know, who aren't corporate, who are willing to kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, take a risk on someone, as long as our advocates can kind of be that go-between in helping them secure housing. Because, like, especially people that are transitioning from prison, they're making, you know, they have jobs, they have a sustainable income, but because of, you know, either having to check that box or, you know, the landlord finds out sort of, you know, that when they don't have like a recent last known address, things like that, they just need that advocate, and they're largely very, very successful. But that is like the number one thing that keeps people from transitioning successfully into the community from prison, especially, is not having housing secured. So I think just like if there are people in congregations that are small landlords that want to get involved, we have the Housing Rights and Resource Center, and we do like landlord panels, landlord seminars, and things like that on fair housing laws and just how landlords and tenants can sort of establish good communication and make sure the leases are fair and things like that. So that would be one way, is just to kind of cultivate that group of landlords who are willing to kind of work with people.
Thank you. Shelby or Jose? I'm sorry, Allison or Jose?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one very easy way is, of course, I couldn't come here and not try to solicit volunteers, of course. So like I said, we use volunteer labor, no skill required. If you come with skills, of course, we love that, but there's no requirement at all to come and volunteer for Habitat. We'll teach you whatever skill needs to be learned that day, and of course not doing anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing. There's almost always painting and cleaning to do, which feels accessible. So of course, coming to volunteer, we work in Lancaster City. We're going to be starting a new build project. We haven't done a new build since like 2015-ish. We're doing that out in Columbia, which is really exciting. And then we also working up in Lebanon City. Also, in addition, you know, we do need volunteers that aren't just on construction, of course, over at our restore as well. But a huge thing, you know, so these zoning meetings, like I say, we go and we get yelled at, we get beat up. A lot of neighbors come to shut us down, and having neighbors there to support us is so lovely. Even, you know, not necessarily having to say much, just say that, you know, I live in this municipality and I would like to see more affordable housing here, could make a really huge impact when, you know, we've got a room full of neighbors that are saying the exact opposite. So, you know, maybe not the most thrilling way to spend an evening at your municipality zoning board meeting, but those things really do matter. They really do. Seeing people come out, you know, and in support of affordable housing, especially when it's not going to immediately benefit you. I think that carries a lot of weight. And that kind of, again, goes for so many of our social social ills. You know, we pay school taxes even if you don't have kids or don't have kids in school, because we're trying to build a well-educated, well-housed community. So just in that same way, if there would be a way that we could all, you know, support each other in whatever municipality in which you live, could be a huge way that you could support all three of our missions here.
Thank you. Jose?
You know, my thing, I'll just go back to what Shelby had referenced earlier. I think one of the biggest pieces that a group like this could be instrumental in is the advocacy piece, and providing education to their neighbors, and do attend meetings that these topics do come up in, and speak to the need for this work. I think that's critical. You know, for anybody on the call here, if you are interested in coming and visiting with me so I can show you the work that we do firsthand, so that you could have a better perspective, please feel free to reach out to me. I will give my contact information on the chat here, so that you can do so. I love actually doing that, because I talk about this all the time. And I think when folks come and see and they get a different perspective by seeing it firsthand, it being done. And then that might actually drive you to want to be an advocate. So I welcome that opportunity.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Jocelyn, you dropped a question in the chat, and I'm wondering if you would be comfortable elaborating a little bit more on your question, just so folks have more context. You can also unmute yourself if you want to just ask the question too.
I just was wondering about immigrants. We as a church have been hosting some Afghanistan immigrants particularly, and trying to find housing for them has been challenging. And so I just was wondering how that integrated with what you all are doing and how it has impacted, because I know Lancaster County has a lot of immigrants, more than the average city of this size. So I just was wondering how that impacted what you did.
Jocelyn, I go to Grace Community Church in Willow Street, and we're also hosting an Afghan family. So it was a mom, her mother-in-law, and her 2 or 3 small children. And they were working with Joe, the case manager at Church World Service, who has sort of his list of landlords, and their, budget was like around $1,100 a month, I think, but needed no transportation. So needed to be near a bus route, like had some, things that were required. And we ended up placing them through our church. Like, the church put out a call to say, do you know of anybody, who has a rental or anything? And it ended up being like a house that was recently rehabbed, and they were about to put it on the market for sale. And because they had the ability, to turn it into a rental, and didn't need to sell it, but they could keep it in their portfolio, they turned it into a rental. And that was the only way we found. I mean, we found units that were like upper floors, but the mother-in-law had mobility issues, and in apartment buildings you can't do chair lifts, so that's a challenge. So I would just, there's definitely, it's impacted the competition, for lack of a better term, for these units, for sure, because per capita Lancaster has more immigrants than many other places throughout the country. So it's definitely a challenge. I mean, we love, obviously, our immigrant, our refugee population adds so much to our community. But when in a, housing market where we're like 2% vacancy, it's already hard, and then, I forget how many Church World Service has helped place from Afghanistan, like in the last year, but it's a pretty large number. So.
Well,
I think
thank
it's
you.
190. Sorry.
190.
Wow.
I think all of our families have now found housing, but it was very difficult, very challenging.
We have time for one or two more questions if folks have questions for the group.
I'll unmute myself. This is Tim Stuhlder. All the panelists are aware that there are a number of American Rescue Plan Act applications pending before the city and county. Wondering if anyone has any thoughts on the chance of leveraging some of that money, particularly the county money for affordable housing projects.
So I can go first. We do have an application into the city for the set aside that was put out for I think it was $5 million that they set aside to address the issue of affordable housing units in the city. Our proposal revolves around maintaining our property that's at General Cigar, the 30 affordable housing rental units there. As you know, getting into this business to try to provide housing for folks that are at 40 and 50% of median income comes with the price of not being able to at sometimes maintain the property to the condition that it needs to be in. It's been about 22 years that property has been in service. We've been somewhat able to make some investments back into the units. Recently spent over 200,000 changing out all the HVAC units at the property. But our proposal goes into being it's roughly 800,000 to refurbish the units inside and put in a new appliance packages. About 70% of those units there still have the same appliance packages that were there 22 years ago. So we kind of want to do a refresh there. This represents an opportunity for us to continue the affordability of those units over an extended period. We're willing to commit to that. And so that's the project that I have. In terms of the county, I'm not privy to any of those because our focus has solely been in Lancaster City.
And I know we do have an application in for each in the city and in the county. They're both for kind of projects that are still TBD pending their acceptance. So, but yeah, fingers crossed. We'll see.
We don't develop a lot of affordable housing. We do have applications in to sort of similar to Jose. Our TLC shelter is in great need of some rehabilitation. So that's what our applications are in for ARPA for city and county.
Thank you. Time for one more question. Well, I think we have all learned a great deal this evening, and I'm so grateful to each of the panelists for their time and energy and the wonderful work that they do for our community. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And yeah, I hope that it was a chance to learn more about what you can do in your own community to continue affordable home ownership. So thank you all. And don't miss, I think Jose and Allison have each dropped their contact information into the chat. It looks like maybe Shelby is also doing that. And we'll also include that when we send out a link to the recording as well, so that if you don't have a chance to catch it now, we'll make sure that it's also available to you when we send it out. So thank you, Shelby, Jose, and Allison, and thanks to all of you for attending. Have a good evening.
Thank you.